As Brian said, my name is Michael O'Brien. I do have a doctorate. I am Dr. O'Brien in certain circles. However, it's all formal and stodgy and stiff, and I don't like it. So please call me Mike or Milo. Some people have taken to that, so it's an old nickname. So you're welcome to in any way, shape, or form. So anyway, we're here. I'm here today to tell you as much as I can about auditioning. Now, granted, auditioning, I'm a little bit of background. I was an actor for a little bit. I've gone through these auditions. I've gone through mass auditions. I've felt the fear and terror and excitement of going through an audition, both for on small scale and large scale. I'll give you those experiences as best I can, but I eventually turned into a director, and that's my primary occupation in the theater. So a lot of what this is going to be about is what I look for as a director as well. So hopefully that will be of some use in some way, shape, or form. So, but that's my perspective on the whole thing. Also, any question at any time, raise your hand, spit it out, stop me, okay? Because don't worry about writing things down too much to try to ask me later. Make me clarify it right here, right now, because there's lots of little fringy things that could happen during an audition and about auditions. So anyway. To get started, how many of you have ever been through a local, like, community college audition? How many of you have ever been through, like, a regional theater audition? Has anybody ever done those massive, countrywide St. Louis, Chicago auditions? Have you really?
I auditioned for the School of Rock in Chicago. I made the mistake of wearing a leather jacket as well as every other tiny child.
Yeah, so you've done a pro audition for a pro theater production.
I guess I did.
Good for you. So congrats. Auditioning, the primary purpose of an audition, as an actor, yes, is to get work. The primary purpose of an audition for a director is to find the right personalities, okay? If I go into an audition, I know my script inside and out. I know the text of what I want to do. I know the things I want to try to get out of it. I don't know who those people are yet, physically. But I know them internally. I know the character's heart. I know their soul. I know their motivations. And that's what I need to match. I need to match people to characters. So when you go into an audition, what you want to show off, at least to me, and at least in a situation where you don't know what the director wants, which is a whole other subject, but if you don't know what the director or the theater or the organization wants out of your audition, you have to go in there with the idea of just showing yourself off the best you can. Now, showing yourself off does not mean showing off. Okay, there's a huge difference. Thank you for laughing at that. So showing off is, no. If we catch you showing off, a director is just going to scratch you off immediately. But you want to show yourself off. You want to show your personality. You want to show your heart, your soul. We want to see who you are as a person, because it's easier for directors and my sort to put you in places that make sense. So you can do the job, and we can do the job, and we can have a fantastic product at the end of it. So that being said, where was I going with this? Okay. I wrote down, your personality. We want to see your aura, your vibe, your humor, your heart and soul. We want to see you as a human being. And human being, I think, is one of the key things that we need to see. I don't need to see phony. I don't need to see false. I don't need to see, be who you are, okay? We're also looking for skill and discipline, okay? Yes, as an actor, you're going to have a certain skill. And everybody's skill is different. Everybody's talents are different. I have a background in non-realistic theater and popular entertainment. So when I look for things, I'm not always looking for the most realistic actor. Okay, but you don't know that. So you just need to show me who you are. So if you come across as fun and silly, yeah, I'm paying attention. If that's what the role calls for. If I need realistic actor, Anyway, you get the point. Skill and discipline. Discipline's the other thing that I think is vital to an audition, especially where it's something where you don't know anybody, where you're going in cold to directors you don't know, to organizations you know. Because a lot of times, if you work with a theater group, I won't just say community theater, but any theater group, if you work with any theater group that you know, where you know everybody, you go to the board meetings, you go to every show, you go to the cast parties, you work backstage, you work on stage. If you know these people, it's easier to go into an audition and be fun and have silly and be relaxed. But a lot of times in those situations, people will forgive you for getting a line and saying, hey, can I stop and start over? Okay? That's not discipline in the professional world, okay? That's what I mean by discipline. Know your stuff. Be ready to do anything. And there are weird situations where a director will say, I love the monologue. Well, you try it a different way. And if you're disciplined, you say, yes, give me a second. You turn around, you think about it, and you give it a shot a completely different way. Okay, that's what I mean by discipline. Be dedicated to the craft. Those are the things we're looking for. Now, questions at this point. Like I said, fire them at me whenever you're ready. Monologues. What do you choose as monologue material? Like I said, has anybody ever done a memorized monologue for? What kind of things did you pick? I know you've done it, and I know I've seen it. What did you, refresh my memory.
Opening monologue to Dear Evan Hansen.
Oh, that's right. Other things. Yes?
I remember this was actually for a theater class where we had, this was actually for a theater class where we had to practice preparing a monologue. But I did something out of a book that my theater teacher had.
Okay.
It was called I Can't Stop Thinking Today.
Interesting. Now, it was just handed to you. Did you pick it, or?
Well, I picked it.
Okay.
I looked for something that felt a bit unique to me.
Okay, good. Hang on to that thought. I want to come back to it. Other ones, other monologues.
I wrote my own. Did that for an audition.
Was that the one you did for last semester, or no?
Yeah, the first one.
Right, okay. Mm-hmm. Yes. I do remember that, yes.
I was going to say, I did one from the Charlie Brown musical I did for your class.
That's right.
And I actually, for one of my other classes, I performed it too, just while being videotaped. It was kind of one of those practice videotaping class.
Oh, okay, so you got a second chance to perform that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just did. It was like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, fun, okay.
I still had it memorized. I still had it memorized, and I can kind of go back to it, if need be.
Good for you. I can't keep a monologue in my head to save my life. So anyway, Thomas, you had?
I had one called The Last Eminem Samurai that I found online.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, I chose specifically because it was very casual and pretty goofy. So I felt like it was a pretty good pick for showing off my personality.
Okay,
it wasn't
yeah.
anything too serious, and it wasn't that much of a character.
Right.
It was just a guy.
Okay, okay, good. Yeah, anybody else? Yes.
I've performed Mr. Darcy's first proposal.
Say that one more time.
So Mr. Darcy's first proposal in Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that's a piece.
Interesting choices. And I say that because when you pick material, again, one of the things is you want to find stuff that you love, okay? If it's easy to go to I kind of tell this to some students. If you're having a hard time finding a monologue, go to the library. There's thousands of books of best scenes and best monologues for student actors, and there's tons of stuff there, and it's all good material. But if you're going to do this professionally, if you're doing this for real, you want to always keep on the lookout for a good monologue. But my advice to you is that make sure it feels right. And I'll do a lot of this, which means make sure it feels right, that it thought-wise, intellectually, oh, it makes sense. I get it. There's something I believe in. And I'll do a lot of this. It's something I can take to my heart. I used to do a short monologue from King Lear, where he's talking about how his daughters have forsaken him, and how one of them is crying because that Goneril, she's the one who actually still loves him. Anyway, I say that I can do that monologue from my heart because I have daughters, and I know what it means when they're upset with me. And if they're disappointed in me, I don't know what that means, but I can imagine. That's here, okay?
Actually, my own father had to stop and mention to me that he knows this one.
I know this speech.
There's a bunch of them like that. Yeah, but that's what I mean by picking a monologue that speaks to your heart, speaks to your soul. Find something. So like these things you said. Oh, you said it was unique. What was?
It was, basically it was about, the monologue itself was about a woman who recently experienced death and couldn't stop thinking about death. But what stood out to me was the juxtaposition of, she kept imagining death, but it was in these like way over the top scenarios, and it was almost this sort of fantastical scale, but of these not at all, but of these like dark subjects where normally you might expect the type of scale of thought she was thinking
Right.
more whimsical.
Right. Okay, interesting. But something clicked here or here about it, and that's an excellent piece. Whether or not the character is you, but if you understand it emotionally, intellectually, yeah, that's something to hang on to. And I think I've told some of these to some of you guys already. But the more, and if you understand it, it's great. Because this King Lear piece, I understand. He comes back, he's confused, but he sees his daughter, and it all clicks, and suddenly he's desperate to make amends. It may not say that in the monologue, but between the lines, that's what I read, and that I know. So I can perform that. And I'm finally getting to the age where it makes sense for me to play King Lear, okay? Which is another thing I want to talk about. But that's the main point. You have to make it clear for yourself, okay? It's probably better to keep a monologue or audition stuff to something within the realm of who you are, physically, age-wise, that kind of thing. Like I said, I can now play. I was trying to do this monologue when in my 30s, this King Lear thing. Never got, didn't work. But I'm in my mid-50s now, and my beard's graying, and it's starting to make sense that King Lear, okay. But for you guys, or most of you guys, no offense to anyone, the material you choose should be something close to your age. Because, it's the theater world. We're visual people. It's a visual medium. I look like this. I'm not going to get around that. I don't care how much makeup and fat suit you put on me, whatever. I'm shaped like a pear. I know it. I walk funny. I have funny habits. I do a lot of this. I know what I do. And I'm not going to get around that. So finding material that complements this gloriousness that is me is a benefit, And that goes for religion, that goes for race, that goes for gender. Any of those things that we discuss now. So keep that in mind when picking material. Does that make sense? Yeah. Again, picking material, and this is another weird thing. I'm going to kind of ramble on a little bit. How many of you plan on going into acting maybe professionally someday? Possibly. Okay. This is more for you guys, but also, if this is going to be a chosen profession, and you're going to do this for a good long while, it's, no audition is identical to the next one. Never, okay? When I give you my perspective, that's what I expect in my, what I expect to see when I audition you for a role. However, you're going to go across the street to some other theater, you're going to get another director, and it's a different artist. It's a different way of thinking over in that theater. They're nuts over there. They only do that realistic new crap. You know the rivalries. We all go through it. But where was I going with this? Okay. So it's good to have multiple monologues in your arsenal. Okay? It's good to have that good King Lear Shakespeare piece. It's good to have that silly poem I found from somebody, from whoever, okay? There's, it's good to have the outlandish, nonsensical, non-realistic piece. It's good to have a piece from a musical, whether it be a song or a monologue from that. It's good to have a few things. Also, this is me speaking from experience going in these I forget the name, Midwest Theater Auditions happen in St. Louis every year, and they happen somewhere around April, May. And you go down there, you sign up, you get in, you get a time slot, and over the course of 4 days, a couple hundred theater companies will audition a couple thousand actors. Okay? So you got to stand out, not only on your day, but over the course of 4 days. And you have no idea. Okay, it's an obnoxious, absurd situation. And I did it. I'm glad I did it. I'll never do it again. It's just ridiculous. But then again, I'm not an actor, so it's up to you. Anyway, but there are restrictions on their auditions. You have 1 minute of audition time. You come in, you say your name, your time starts, go! Monologue, 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 monologue. 60 seconds, doesn't matter if you're done, doesn't matter where you got in your monologue, if you're done at all. Thank you! And then you're gone. Next guy comes up. Hi, my name is so-and-so. Timer starts, monologue, 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 60 seconds. They literally have a gun or a ding or an air horn or something. And you're gone. That's it. So it's grueling. So in terms of monologues, it's good to have that this monologue is 1 minute or just under a minute. I've been to auditions where I want 2 5-minute pieces. Okay. So that means more searching, and what do you find? But it's these long. So naturally you turn to Shakespeare for one of them. But if, like I said, if you're going into do this professionally, it's good to have this arsenal of things. A couple 1-minute monologues, a couple 2-minute monologues, a couple 4-minute monologues, and things you can adjust because you never know what you're going to do, okay? Again, this is a lot of information. How many of you heard the phrase, I want to see 2 contrasting monologues? In your experience, what does that mean? What have you heard?
I've heard contemporary and then like old.
Okay, classical. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
One comedic and one dramatic.
Right.
That's what I was going to
Okay. Anything different?
I would say just 2 that show off vastly different things. So
In the broadest term, that's what I advise students to do. Okay, because yes, a classical piece versus a modern piece. Yes, it shows that you are capable of thinking in those language terms. Comedy and drama. It's good that, it's a good contrast because it shows a director you can deal with the differences between these 2 wildly different genres, styles, whatever you want to call them. But I think Thomas is right, especially when you're talking about showing yourself off. You can have 2 modern language pieces, and they can both be fairly dramatic. But if the characters are different and show off different facets of you, I helped coach a young lady a couple years ago, and she picked out a couple that were fairly modern day. And I thought, are these going to be contrasting enough? And I asked her, are these contrasting enough? And she goes, I think so. And then when she did them, she was right. Because One was a pacing-wise, slow, serious, methodical brooding of a human being who took her time and had a very deep conversation with herself. The second monologue was a completely different energy. She was up, she was bubbly, the character felt slightly younger, and she was talking to just whoever would listen. The characters were vastly different. There were two facets of her, of this young lady, and she got into grad school with it. Kudos, it did her good. So when you hear two contrasting monologues, it can mean a myriad of things. But I highly recommend looking for things that are facets of yourself. Because that's, again, going back to the prime directive here, you want to show off who you are. And that's what this young lady did. She showed off this broody, kind of internal person versus this bubbly, out and open extrovert. I mean, introvert, extrovert, that's maybe a good way to look at those two monologues. But that's yet another way of contrasting your monologues. So there's no right or wrong answer to what it means to be contrasting. But again, go back to who you are. This Shakespeare monologue I keep talking about that I used to do. Straight out of Shakespeare, straight out of King Lear. Act 4, Scene 7, something like that. Late in Act 4. Anyway, I found a poem that condenses the entirety of Shakespeare's King Lear into a minute and a half. The entirety of King Lear into a minute and a half. So I contrast King Lear for real and King Lear in the super sped up poem, okay? And the combination did get me work a couple times because it was, I love them because were they aspects of me? Yeah, King Lear's an aspect of me, but the silly poem, it's another aspect of me. Like I said, I have a history of actually putting on the face and being a clown. I have a history of, puppetry. My skills are a little on the fringe. So I think this combination of things nicely showed me off, and it worked. And apparently I was right, because it did get me a couple of small jobs. And so I hang on to them. And I've done them enough times. I couldn't do it now for you, but I could warm it up in a day's time and get it down with enough skill to go audition with it. So anyway, contrasting monologues. Again, make sense for the most part? Okay, good. Okay, actually performing a monologue. When you guys have actually, and again, this is going back to discipline and skill and a little bit of protocol and just etiquette toward auditioning. This is kind of more of the nuts and bolts of it. This comes out of these big, massive auditions, but they're good things to do for any audition to show your skill, show your etiquette and your technique. One of which is slating. Now, that's what I call introducing yourself and leaving the stage. Okay, slating is simply when you walk on stage, you slate it by saying, "Hi, my name is Mike O'Brien. I'll be performing a piece from King Lear and a short poem about King Lear." Slate. That's the end of it. You step back, take a breath. Monologue. When you're done with the first monologue, you do something that indicates to the audience that you are doing a different monologue. More than likely, the monologues themselves will indicate what they are, but a lot of people just, like the King Lear one I used to say, I used to do the serious King Lear first, which goes against decorum or tradition. Anyway, I did the serious Shakespeare first. No, I didn't. What did I do? Oh.
Did you do one of the King Lear ones first?
Yes, I did one of the. They're both King Lear. I did do those.
I think they know.
Yeah. No, but they're clear. See if I can do it. Here it is. Attend me now, for to my head it came, to tell the story of one king, Lear by name. Oh, it may sound familiar to your ear. There is a version by Shakespeare. But you know the bard, he doth ramble so. He tells the story artfully, but he tells it slow. So, if you do not need literary consecration, please, list to me. I will give you the story's brief summation. There were 3 daughters, 2 were bad, 1 was not. There were 2 sons. 1 was quite a bastard, the other legitimate. There was a king, a fool, a madman in disguise who ran about. There were 11 deaths, 1 suicide, 1 lord had his eyes gouged out. Now, this is only speaking nobility-wise. The common folks, they died like flies. But, in consequence of everything I've said before, there was in this kingdom a civil war, which so distressed the ladies and the gentlemen that the king gave some speeches and went cuckoo in the end. Okay. That one I've got, but King Lear I don't. Okay. But I would do that first. I would do the comedy first, and I would take this big, deep bow. And then this is the moment where I had to myself to transition from that comedy to the serious drama. Then I would come up as King Lear. I'm a very foolish, fond old man, 80 and upward, not an hour more or less. And to deal plainly, I fear I am not in my right mind. And then I would do the dramatic piece last, okay? But it's the idea, and the transition between these two is another thing is what I want to talk to you about. If you have to do 2 monologues back to back like that, a nice transition that's choreographed or written or conceived properly makes a big difference. And again, that goes back to skill and edit, and what's the word I'm looking for? Your discipline, okay? It shows that you've thought about it. And that, I have seen people do such a good job of blending, of combining the 2 monologues, putting them end to end in such a great way that the combination of the scripts got them more work than the actual work on the scripts. I mean, it can, it's an extreme example, of course, but their skill and their discipline showed and paid off. So, again, your slate is just your name, and if you want to introduce the pieces that you're doing, by all means. It can be just the titles of the plays. It can be the plays, the titles and the characters, if you want to, and you don't have to include the authors. But give your directors, give the audience something to, okay, I know where we're headed with this, so it's not a complete surprise, if that makes sense, because sometimes that helps. Because if they just get up there, hi, my name's Michael Bryan, here's a couple monologues, and then it takes them a minute to get into it. But if I say, hi, I'm going to be doing King Lear and a poem about King Lear, okay, they've got a frame of reference to go start with. And that helps them, and that helps you, because, okay, I can see but it gives us more indication as a director about who you are and about how you're taking this. Make sense? Yeah? Okay, good. Okay. Yeah, and introduce yourself when you're done. When you're done with the monologue, take a big breath. You break character and say, thank you, and you repeat your name. Always say your name twice, once before you start your audition and once after, because if you capture their attention during the audition and they weren't paying attention, you give them your name again, because it's just a safety net for you, okay? Because after 3.5 days and 2,500 people, they don't care. They're just looking for that firework in the middle of all of this fizzle, for lack of a better phrase. But if they catch something really glorious going on stage, they suddenly pay attention, and they don't get a name after that. The poor things are just scrolling through lists of names like, I have no idea who that was. But if you give them your name, okay, got it. Call her. You've got a fighting chance. Okay, does it make sense? Okay, good. Now, another thing that can work to your advantage. It can work to your disadvantage. It can creep out a director or somebody who's auditioning you. Sometimes that's fun. But it's focus. So like my King Lear, the poem, Attend Me Now, that is an open focus. That is, we are talking to the audience. So that's the kind of thing where you talk to your audience. You're talking to everybody in the room. Okay, put your eyes on everybody in the room. King Lear, the actual King Lear I did, the way I do it, I'm actually talking, there's two other people in the room. I'm talking to this person, and then my daughter's over here. Okay? That one daughter. So I deliver it. He thinks this woman to be my daughter. This is a closed focus. This is fourth wall stuff, okay? Everybody know what I mean when I say fourth wall? Anybody not know? Okay. Not know fourth wall? Okay. Tradition is a set used to be designed as 3 walls on stage. Sometimes it'd be wider like that. But in the realistic movement in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they would play it so realistically that they would pretend that fourth wall of the set was there, okay? So that's the fourth wall. But it's invisible when you're doing hardcore realism, okay? So that's what I mean. It's that barrier, that invisible barrier we put between ourselves and our audience. In something like the King Lear, like the poem, like the silly poem, get rid of the fourth wall. The fourth wall is not there. You are in the same room with your audience. You share it with your audience. It's like what I'm doing right now with you guys. There's no fourth wall between us. We're in, there's an engagement. There's a back and forth. For the actual King Lear performance I would do, that fourth wall came into play. The audience was not there, and I had 2 very specific points where I would put one person and I put my daughter. And I would focus in one spot or the other, depending on where the mood took me. But the focus, and you have that option. You can focus on the audience as a whole, which is fun depending on the piece. You can focus on non-existent people in the room, which can be very effective. However, a lot of people will give you the advice that you have to focus. If you're going to focus on non-existent people with the fourth wall, you put that person in the middle of the audience. Okay? You can do that. You have that option. But that especially in weird situations where you're uncomfortable, like auditioning, you have the option, okay, of one of several things. And I've done them all, and I know my preference, but sometimes if your monologue requires you to talk to a single person, one-on-one, you put that person in the audience. You can either A, give it right to the director, lock eyes on the director, give it to them. Now, for me, as a director and as an actor, that borderlines on the overacting thing I mentioned earlier. For me, that is, you're trying way too hard to get their attention. Like, because I don't want to look at it as a director. I don't want to have to engage with you. I got something else to do. Anyway, you can put it over the top of the head of the last person in the audience. Okay, you can or in this case, if you look behind you in the booth, there's this big, giant, white-faced clock that is a genius, wonderful focal point. So if you got to, so if you want to focus that monologue to that clock, it's a great way to talk to it. A great way to talk to that person. Okay, you can find an empty chair, and I've seen this done also with some other friends. One guy I worked with named Tim, he was really nervous about this monologue because it was really personal to him, and he kind of shook. I mean, it was this kind of personal where, a long story, it was just personal, very personal, real deep in his heart kind of thing. So he wanted to do this for an audition, but he was fearful that because it was so personal, he would screw it up in front of strangers. So he took a friend with him, and he literally kind of scanned the room, and he got his friend in a certain chair. And sure enough, he come on stage, he did his opening, hi, my name is Tim, and he did his monologue to his friend. And his friend gave him the encouragement, he had the right attitude and the right expression on his face to keep Tim going forward. That's legit. You need to do that. Take that buddy with you. It helps. And he got the job, and he got the work. So that's my notes. Okay? Yes?
We're talking about places to put an imaginary person. What about on stage with you? I mean, assuming they're not like directly to the side and you're no longer cheating out.
That would be my main concern. Like I said, with the King Lear thing, there's two people, in my mind there's two people in the room because it's kind of what it says. But I put them just on the other side of, so whether it's just off stage or whether it's the corner seats, it's still facing forward. But if you're trying to talk to an empty chair, that doesn't work. And in an audition situation. In a workshop acting rehearsal, yeah, that's what you need to do. But keep your face out. Don't worry about having and props are not necessary in an audition because you got to travel light. And in case of the St. Louis mass auditions, you got to travel fast and light. If you're talking to somebody else that's off stage, put them off stage. Put them out there, put them in the last corner, put them somewhere out there. That's just a good habit. Unless it's just one of those weird little pieces where it makes the most sense. But off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you what that is. So, now all of this is for stage auditions, for live theater auditions. And you guys have upcoming, at least at Parkland, 2 sets of virtual auditions. Which means you got to do monologues in front of a camera, in front of nobody, not knowing any of this. All of this still applies. Every last inch of it still applies. The only real difference is you on a screen, okay? And my best advice is, and again, this is me coming to you as a director and not an actor, but if I'm casting, and I'm going to be one of these guys casting one of these shows, if we're casting via videotape and virtual, what I want to, auditioning requires the body, because like I said, you saw the Lear poem. It's not just me standing here talking head, it's me all over the place, me being pain in the ass, moving around. So you kind of have to be able to encompass that. Depending on the piece, depending on how much you move for this monologue, for this audition, my best recommendation is set up your camera, set up your computer however you need to get just over your head to about waist. Give us the upper half of your body. Okay, and play in the camera. So you got a couple spaces this way, you got a couple this way. But in terms as a director, I need to see you as much as possible. And that includes some of your physicalities, some of your body shape, some of, whatever it is, your choreography, your personal quirks and weirdness, okay? I want to see that as well. So, film yourself from there up. Because if you try to film yourself head to toe, I'm losing some face. Granted, that happens anyway with a live audition, but for some reason, my glasses and the rest of the world is clearer in person than on video. So my suggestion is from the waist up, okay? And unless the monologue is just one of those where it's so contained and so intimate and you don't move, you can tighten in a little bit. But my recommendation is give us top half of your body at all times, if that makes sense. And the same goes with the focus. Okay, if you're talking to the audience, if it's an open focus where you're talking to the audience and you don't want that fourth wall to be there, look right in the lens. Right at the lens. Go right home with it, okay? There's a little circle in the middle of that lens. That's your focus. And everybody on the other side of that lens will read it. Oh, okay, I got you. You're talking to me. And it works just fine, okay? Otherwise, if you're not talking, if you're offstage people, put up your markers in the room. Find those markers in your room. If it's just, if it's Hamlet, to be or not to be, that is the question. Your focus is wherever it needs to be, but not at the camera and not, at a fixed point. So, does that make sense? And again, like I said, most of my experience, 99.99% of my experience is live theater. So doing, suddenly COVID makes me do a lot of things on video, through the camera, through the microphone, and I'm getting used to it as well. So anyway, those are my notes in terms of what, the basics about going to an audition and what it means to be an auditioner and material. Any questions from you guys? Yes.
Okay, so what's your advice on like physicality? Like, is there like a range that you suggest, or like?
Again, that goes back to who you are, okay? And what you want to show. Because if you're a person who moves a lot, you're going to do that anyway in the interpretation of your monologues. You're going to move. Once you think the thought, your body will follow the way it naturally does. And that's what we want to see. But don't put on physicalities that you don't normally have unless the monologue calls for a little bit of that. Because like the poem about King Lear requires a different physicality than actually being King Lear. Okay? So yes, we want to see those differences, but don't put anything on. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask, this is a bit more of a specific question, but with the actual virtual auditions that are coming up, I was just wondering, because you did spend a good chunk of time on them, and obviously it was useful advice regardless of the answer to this question, but are you going to be asking for contrasting monologues for either of those auditions?
We haven't nailed it down yet because there's 3 different directors, and we're going to try to put all that information out within a week's time at the latest. Okay, if we can, I would like to see 2 contrasting monologues, 2 short, 30 seconds to 1 minute. 2 monologues, 30 seconds to 1 minute each. That would be my personal preference. So if you want to start prepping for those by that's okay by me. But I can't say anything official yet because we really haven't come to a consensus at this point.
But that kind of goes back to what you said earlier about just having bits.
Yes.
That you're ready to brush up on short notice.
Right. So yeah, if you've got a couple of those pieces that you already have in mind that you think are going to speak to who you are and show you off, get them ready. Yeah. And I say that because some people want to hear monologues and want to hear stuff from the show they're directing. Okay, so you have to come in with either that monologue that they've given out, or come in and cold read. Okay, and cold reads that's a whole nother seminar. That's a whole nother skill set.
I'm actually more used to cold reading.
Up until I started going to school for theater, that was my experience too. I can read a script quickly and get a mild feel for it and put something behind it. But but if you're going in cold with especially with these virtual auditions, it's going to be a monologue situation. Okay, 90% of the time, yeah. But yeah, if you got a couple things in your head already, get them out, get them ready. They could work for you. Yes, ma'am.
So are you wanting to have a vocal piece as well with our auditions?
Vocal piece meaning sing?
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to need it. Not that I won't balk at it if you want to show it off. It won't be necessary for this piece though, for these auditions, because they're all pretty much straight plays. Yeah. Anything else while we're at it? Awesome. Thank you guys very much for coming out. Thank you for letting me prattle on about all of this. I hope you found it useful. Yeah, you're welcome.